So once the entire backing of the painting has been glued, it's ready to be removed from the frame, and then the frame is glued. I'm just going to set this aside over here. I have the cloth laid down so that it can go in the cloth. And the second layer of glue will go on the board itself. So now the board gets glued. Makes a bit of a racket. And again, I'm just using an old card, debit card or some kind of card. I have quite a few of them in my studio. Gift card, you know, any of these little plastic cards you get work really well as a squeegee for this purpose. I don't worry too much about the edges because once I glue the work to the board, I'm actually not going to glue the edges. It's going to sit under a lot of weights for probably 48 hours, and then I'll worry about gluing the sides. I like to let the glue sit up for a few minutes and dry a little bit. That makes it a little tackier, and that helps with the adhering. And as I'm doing this, that's exactly what's happening to the artwork. That's why I do the artwork first, so it can have a few minutes to set up. And I have to be very liberal with how much glue I'm giving this. It takes a lot, so it's not, you know, glue's expensive and the board's expensive and all that, but the reality is if you don't have enough and it lifts from the board, you have a problem. You have to, what I call, do surgery on the piece and cut into it and glue the backing, and it's a job. So you're better off not being stingy with how much glue you put onto the board in the artwork. It's kind of a do it right the first time, and then you won't have problems. And you can see as the glue is starting to dry and set up, it all of a sudden looked like we had way too much. It's starting to look pretty much like about the right amount. Now, that said, I am putting some back into the bottle. It is very expensive. It's like $65 a gallon, something like that. So I don't want to waste any, but I don't want to be stingy and waste time fixing the problem. So this is a bit of a process doing this. You give yourself at least an hour. I'm going to put some back in the bottle. Give it a All right, so now that all the glue is dispersed evenly on the board, okay, so it's on the board, I'm going to adhere. So now that the glue is on the board, I'm going to adhere the painting to the board. So what I've done in advance is I've folded just 2 of the 4 corners. In this case, the bottom, and the side. And that's how I know when I'm laying it down, because it is big, right? How to make sure it lines up properly. So I have the bottom and this side all folded, so it's ready to go. And you can see how I hit the sides. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. But, okay, yep. And this one's going to come up a little bit. There we go. Bring it up just this tad. So this takes a little bit of maneuvering. You can see why it's so important to have the sides folded in advance. And now I'm using a bone folder, which is a basic bookbinder's tool. I'm going to start pushing down very hard to get this to glue to the surface. And this is why you need a lot of glue and you need a lot of pressure. Because the piece the artwork is heavy at this point. It has layers and layers and layers of pulp on it. And so the surface is really built up. I tend to use wax paper for this. Again, something a lot of bookbinders will use, so that it, you know, you don't smear anything by any chance. That would be hard to do with this process, but you can still do it. And you just keep going along. It takes a while, you know. You have to be very careful that you get all those glued surfaces to stick. And when I leave this under the weights, I'm gonna flip it upside down. I'm gonna lay a felt on my studio floor, flip it onto the felt so that the painting is against the felt, and then fill the back of it with cinder blocks and very heavy weights. 5-gallon buckets of water filled to the brim, which I think weigh like 50 pounds by the time that you do that. Tons of weight. And I'm gonna let it sit like that for at least 48 hours. And again, because this is so thick, and I try to make my sheets as thin as possible, but it's still, you know, poured pulp with a lot of pulp on it. Adds weight. There's some weight to this. I don't fold the other sides until after it's dry. So I'll make a separate video of how I fold the sides over and adhere those. So at any rate, that's how I get my pulp paintings onto the armature. And again, I'm gonna dry it on a felt blanket so that this is flipped over onto the blanket and fill it with cinder block.